Well, welcome back. Once again, it's Dr. Ganatra, and I'm so excited to have you here for this free 3-part video training series on how to build, market, and grow your practice. I promise you're going to get a ton out of this series. Just stick with me here, and this is the first of the 3 videos, and really just going to kind of go into the 5 essentials. You know, if you know my story, you know I practiced at 5 different practices when I first got out of school, and I hated all of them, you know, because you just don't know all this stuff when you graduate dental school, and you don't know what you want out of your career. You figure, okay, I know all this dentistry, and I've done this many crowns, and I've done this many veneers, or whatever it is, and you start practicing, and everything's different, and you feel like you are dropped into this field of this unknown within the practice of dentistry. And that's what I struggled with the most. So in this video, I kind of want to clarify what are the 5 essentials that you really need to focus on wherever you are in your career, whether you're just starting off as a dentist who just graduated, or you've been practicing for a few years and you don't have your first practice yet, or you haven't even thought about the idea of buying an office or creating an office. These are the 5 things I want you to focus on. Wherever you are in your place, focus on these 5 things and it will get you to where you want to be. For me, it was a few years before I started my first practice, and I realized that these 5 things that I'm going to go over with you are the trends and the topics that I always have to hit and improve every day of practicing dentistry. Because the goal isn't just to practice dentistry the way we want to. The goal is to be fulfilled with what we're doing every day on a daily basis, and really to be able to create an impact to give to our patients to that maximum level that we're trained to give. So let's just jump right into it. What's the first thing that we really need to harness and to give attention to when we're creating this type of atmosphere to help us build, market, and grow our practice? The first thing is we need to have an element of creation, okay? I'll just erase that right there. Let's even say vision. We need to have some element of creation or vision. Here's what I mean by that. You have to ask yourself, what's your vision for your practice 5 years from now? If you don't have an office right now, what's your vision to be on that direction? If you are not thinking of even owning an office, ask yourself, what makes you feel comfortable not owning a practice? So we have to really ask ourselves these questions, because in our field as dentists, really, if we're not building something, if we're not creating something like our own platform or our own practice, then we're really just doing that manual labor of the dentistry, which is great, and that's going to create an impact. But if you're interested in creating something around the labor of dentistry, then you really should think about creating a practice somehow for yourself, whether it's through purchasing a practice or, you know, building a practice. Essentially, I built my first office. I figured that that was a good route to go, and looking back, that is, like, I feel like one of the best ways for me, and that may work for you. But I highly encourage you to think about what you want to create in the next 5 years. Where do you want to be? Do you want to just continue to practice the way you're practicing right now? If you have your own practice, what do you want out of that practice in the next 10 years? So we have to have a vision for our future. We have to have some clarity on what we want out of this game, right? So that's what I started thinking about first. And for me, I wanted my own practice. And that's how I came to the conclusion that, you know what, that's the only way I'm going to get a platform, something that I'm building consistently throughout my career. And that's what I want for you. I want you to consistently be building something throughout your career, because eventually that practice is going to be something of great value to you, because now all that labor of dentistry that you've done in that practice, you can package it up and sell it. So this is long-term thinking. If you're not even thinking about selling your practice right now, that's fine. I'm not expecting that. But what I want you to think about is, what are you going to do today or tomorrow to create that platform where you're not just doing the labor of dentistry, where you have the independence to get an associate, or to create different systems in your practice, or to explore different treatment options for other patients. And you can only do these things and harness this creativity if you have your own platform or your own practice. Henceforth, that's why I created this course, Dental Practice Mastery, so that you can master the workings of having your own practice and really be successful and feel great about being a dentist. So start thinking about what you're going to create and what's your vision for this field. This is very important. All too often I meet a lot of dentists who just don't have a vision for where they want to go in the next 5 years. Now that's okay initially, but as soon as you start getting on that system or that routine of practicing dentistry, you got to know where you're going to go with it. Where are you going to go with it? Are we going to just react to our days and our weeks and our months and just do dentistry blindly? Or are we going to focus our efforts and say, hey, look, this is what I want to do. I want to build a practice. I want to buy an office. And if you're going to create a practice, how are you going to create it? Where's the location you want to practice in? How do you negotiate the lease for that location? That's important to know, right? You have to find a location, you have to evaluate that location, you have to negotiate the lease for that. Essentially, if you're building one, you have to hire contractors. You got to hire contractors for that. We can put that in there. How do you hire contractors for your practice so you can build it out? And then, how do you design and create that space of your practice? These are all things you want to think about. Even if you're buying an existing office, you have to evaluate that office and how it was built. Is it built to satisfy your personality, the way you want to practice dentistry, or are you just buying something and getting yourself into a structured trap of what may appear to be great, but is really just a trap of poor business thinking, right? So I want you to kind of think about what's your vision for your practice. And this is what I first started thinking about, that vision for me and dentistry and my practice. And this is the first place you want to start. If you're going to create, where's your location? How are you going to negotiate the lease for when you build out your practice or when you buy an office? How are you going to hire contractors to build that office? Second, after you build the office and after you've purchased the office, you have to focus on the business structures. The other name for this are the systems. So the business systems and the structures. This is what I mean by this. For instance, are you going to take HMO? Are you going to take PPO? How do you treatment plan patients that have HMOs? And how do you effectively set up front office systems so that way your staff is not always dependent on you? What do you do with your back office so that way patients have a consistency of experience in your practice? Because you know what? Believe it or not, quality is directly linked to consistency. If people consistently get the same experience when they come into a business and that system is there, then your patients are going to judge the quality by the consistency of that system. So how do you create systems within your practice that add value to your business? That's what I want you to focus on. How to create systems in your practice. Start thinking about systems. There's a great book out on this. It's called E-Myth. E-Myth Revisited. And it's all about creating that system in your practice so that that way it functions without you there. Now, I know you may be thinking, whoa, I don't even have an office right now, and you're telling me to create a system. That's okay. Because if you're thinking in the terms of systems, even if you're at a practice right now, you have to start thinking, okay, what systems here can I take and adapt to my future office? Or can I say, hey, you know what? These are some things that I don't ever want to do in my practice. When I was working at one of the offices that I was at, one of the 5, there were things that they were doing I made a mental note on. I was like, this is what I never want to do. So I started creating those systems early on. And wherever you're at right now, even if you have your own office, do you have the systems for your front office, your back office? Whereas if someone came into your practice today, a new person, could they be trained in the matter of a month or 2 weeks or 3 weeks? Is there an office manual that can actually show them A to Z what they are expected to do? If you have these systems in place, you're going to pivot to a new path with your office. If you don't have the systems in place, then you know what? You're constantly going to be on that wheel of like trying to redesign, reinvent, and that gets very exhausting. So I started thinking about business systems and structures, you know, all those things that go into place. How do you set up your business, your corporation? Is it an S Corp? Is it a C Corp? Is it an LLC? How do we tax plan all this stuff out? That's really important as well. Third, you have to think about your team. How do you train your team? Now, notice I said train, and training involves a system, right? How do you train your team? What do you focus on for your office meetings? Are office meetings just, you know, complaining and moaning and groaning sessions that, you know, all too often, unfortunately, a lot of practices have those? Or are they sessions in which you're inspiring and you're motivating your staff and the people around you to bring in a better version of themselves every day? What is it for you? What is it for your practice? Look at the people around you right now in the practices that you may be working at. What kind of team do you want to foster? What kind of, you know, staff and collective energy do you want that office to have when a patient walks in and looks at your practice? So that team is really important. How well does your people on your front desk, do your front office managers and your treatment coordinators, how well do they answer the phones? That is one of the most important gateways into your practice. Effective training with answering the phones is so important because they're never going to get to you unless your staff knows how to answer the phones, right? So this is very important. Having good staff meetings is very important. Also, the other thing is, how do you create leadership in your practice? So I can put team and leadership here, okay? Leadership. How do you create leadership in your practice? Who's the leader that takes that business to a place down the future that's in your mind, but that's not currently there? Who's that leader that takes that practice to the next level? How do you inspire and motivate your people so that way they're inspired to go to that next step? So that way they're growing within themselves to create a better practice. That's important too. Hiring those people are important. How do you hire the right people? Those are some of the things you want to start thinking about. Hiring, there's a system of hiring great people. I've been very fortunate throughout the last 10 years. And trust me, when I first started off, this was such a problem for me. I remember I got called on a Sunday night from one of my office managers on the second office I had built. And she pretty much called me and said, hey, look, I'm not coming in tomorrow. So I was left with no office manager, and it was Monday and we had patients coming in. But to make a long story short, I had to have one of my assistants go to the front and do all that shuffling stuff, but that's not the way to run an office. A right way to run a practice is to have your team designated to do certain duties within the systems of the business, right? So I want you to think about what kind of team do you want to have so that way it can foster the leadership that you're going to provide them. And you as a leader, what kind of qualities are you going to need to have? Are you going to need to be patient? Are you going to need to be authoritative? Are you going to need to be structured? Those are all things that are really important. Finally, marketing. One of the essential elements is marketing. Put that down in there. This is so important and such a big word. When you tell people or ask them, hey, do you market your practice? Most of them say, yeah, sometimes I do, or, you know, well, we don't do a ton of marketing, but how do you even start marketing a practice? If you're building a new office, where do you start? If you bought an existing office, do you have to look at what the other owner was doing and match that, or do you want to take that practice to a new level? Marketing your practice is so important. There's 4 areas of marketing that we really got to focus on. Online marketing, local marketing, print marketing, and internal marketing. And you know, marketing today has changed so much from what it was 10 years ago that a lot of practices are slowing down or going out of business because they just don't know how to market their practice. They don't know how to position themselves so that way patients choose them as a natural choice over all the other practices out there. You got to focus on key elements of your marketing, online marketing, your social media marketing. How do you set up that online presence? That's really important as well, okay? And that's the first thing that you need to do if you just bought an office or you are creating your own practice. Setting up that presence online so that way when someone searches for you online, you're found. Did you know that the third most searched for topic online is healthcare information? Third most searched for thing, healthcare information. We as dentists own that topic. We are healthcare providers. We need to be marketing to our patients online effectively so that way when they search for us, we show up, okay? I almost kind of erased that. Finally, treatment planning, okay? This is so key. When I first got out of school, when an office manager told me, hey, Dr. Ganatra, if you want to do more veneers, treatment plan more veneers. And I was like, well, that's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But when I started thinking about it, she was really right. Because all too often, dentists want to do more procedures, but the obvious, unrecognized fact is that they don't treatment plan them. How are you treatment planning your cases? So not only are you getting more of the procedures you want to do, but you're sequencing them and you're setting them up and packaging them up so patients are motivated and certain to buy from you. And that is the key. If you're going to build an office and it's going to go from no patients to over 3,000 patients in a few years, how do you treatment plan them? An office that does over $1 million, I call that a tier 3 office. If they're doing over $1 million a year, guess what? They're treatment planning $1 million worth of dentistry every year. Their treatment planning is a lot different than someone that's doing 200 or 300 or 400,000 a year, okay? Night and day. And you need to know how to sequence that treatment, how to package it up, and how to present it to your patients. There are certain steps on how you connect with your patients, how you present that treatment to them, how you package it up, and how you send your patients off so that way they come back to your office. Because eventually when patients leave your practice, how are they getting back in there? Your treatment plan has a lot to do with that, and your marketing has a lot to do with that as well. So all these 5 essentials that we've gone over today, these are so critical to your success as a dentist. If you really just don't master these, if you don't really handle these for your practice or wherever you're at right now, you're going to have a lot of static and a lot of friction in our field trying to get to where you want to get to. And these are some of the things along the way. These are the 5 key elements. I still focus on all these 5 things. Every time I'm in the practice, how do I, create a vision for where I want to go? How do I, put together the business structures and the systems? How do I change those systems? What are these structures? How is my practice working right now within the confines of the structures I've created? What am I doing with my team to promote leadership, to kind of engage with them, to see where their concerns are, to be a better person with them? What am I doing here? This is so important. And all too often, most practices struggle with the fact that they don't have a great team, because your practice is only as good as the weakest link on your team, right? You can't be everywhere. You can't play all roles. All too often we do, and we have to realize that, there is a system in which we got to plug our team into. And knowing that system and marketing that system is so important for the success of your business. If you want to take your business to the next level, you have to learn how to market it. And then treatment planning, that's the thing. If you don't treatment plan someone, then those patients are not going to get any work done because there's not going to be any work in the chart, right? So these are the 5 critical elements that I want you to focus on. Leave me a comment or a question underneath this video. I will comment back and reply back to those comments and questions personally. I'll try to get to every one of them, but let me know what you thought. Let me know if this helped you, and I'll see you in the next video where I'm gonna dive in deeper into some of these elements here, and we're really gonna kind of go into how do you market your practice and how do you create that vision and set things up. We're going to dive in a little bit deeper in that next video. Leave me your questions and comments below, and I'm excited to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.